Kia ora mai tātou. We'll get started. Um, can you hear okay down the back? Is that coming through? Cool. Welcome everyone. Nau mai haere mai. Welcome to the Transport Committee. We'll just kick off with a karakia. Me karakia tātou. Whakataka te hau ki te uru. Whakataka te hau ki te tonga. Kia mā kina kina ki uta. Kia mā taratara ki tai. E hi aki ana te atakura. He tio, he huka, he hauhu, ti hei, Māori ora. Welcome along, everyone. It's quite a few matters for us to consider today, and some great public participation for us as well. So thanks to everyone for coming in. Acknowledge Councillor Duffy online and some others. Just before I go into the agenda items, I did want to just acknowledge the very sad death of a person who was on public transport yesterday in Auckland. Thoughts are with the family of the person who's died, and also with the frontline workers who would have been driving the bus and dealing with that incident. It's pretty shocking for us in New Zealand to have a death like that from an incident on public transport, and I think we're all we're all a bit shaken by that. And one of the things that we have a very safe network in that regard in Wellington. We're proud of that. We work hard on that. We want it to stay that way. And so what I thought we would do is, and what I have actually already done, is to ask Nigel and Sam to come back to us as a committee at the next committee for the Transport Committee to talk about safety on board our network and how it's going, what we do, and if there's anything we could do to improve, and how we'll think about that. So thanks to Nigel and Sam for agreeing to do that. Okay, so after that rather sobering acknowledgement, we'll get into the business of the day. So, oh yes, thanks, Councillor Saw. We have this is normal for many councils, but we have a relatively new practice here of live streaming. So just a reminder at the outset that this is live streamed for everybody as well. So thank you. So first item is apologies. And we have an apology from Councillor Gaylor and from Mr. Lenson for absence. And I think that's all the apologies I've received. Thank you, Councillor Staples, for moving. Thank you, Councillor Connolly, for seconding. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, so that's passed. Thank you. Item 2, conflicts of interest. Are there any conflicts of interest to declare? I see none. Thank you. Item 3, public participation. So thank you, everybody, for coming in. First of all, we have the Karori Residents Association, who will be talking about the survey findings that they did. So it's Derek Neal. I know Andrea Skews is here as well. Do you both want to come up, please, and we'll take you through. So you get 5 minutes to speak, and then we have 5 minutes to ask questions. And yeah, we're in your hands. Thank you very much for coming in.
Tēnā koutou katoa ko Andrea Skews tako ingoa, he chairperson taku mahi kei Karori Residents Association e mahi ana. Kia ora. Thanks for having us. Going to hand over to Derek in a minute because he's the details guy. But a bit of history here. We did a Karori survey phase 1, which was asking Karori residents what their priorities were in topics such as infrastructure, transport, security, safety, and we were then going to drill down on the top 3. The top 3 were infrastructure, transport and environmental. Close fourth was safety and security. So we decided to throw in a few extras as well, but phase 2 was that. Phase 2 response was 1,099 respondents, so that was great. And then phase 3, Derek decided, because he's so clever, that he would drill down even more. Most of the questions had comments ability, and so there were hundreds and hundreds of comments on a lot of the questions. So Derek's decided to drill down on that and give us a really in-depth analysis, which is wonderful, as he remembers to turn his phone off. And once he's finished with that, I shall hand over to him. So I think he's going to give you a little bit. What you've got in your handouts is just the transport section and our demographic. So you've got your pretty pie charts, which was my job, and then the details and explanations over to Derek. I'm going to swap seat so you can have that.
Thank you. Thank you. Just by way of a quick background on it, Karori is, as many of you will be aware, is limited by its roading access. The tunnel restricts transport in and out of Karori to a large extent, to the point where buses have trouble getting through that tunnel. You can't have a bus going both ways half the time. It depends on the size of the bus. It is also recognised by residents that public transport is a significant need for the suburb, and they're very supportive of Wellington Bus and the work you guys are doing in providing transport to the area. In fact, 2/3 of the respondents consider the bus service as adequate and meets their needs. Commentary, though, criticisms, I suppose, would be that
they must have swapped for some
they
reason.
get overloaded.
This guy speaking, I used to work with him at Kaingaora. He was like
The new buses
sort of OEA team.
proposing are considered a good step forward. There is a desire to have better access to public transport, especially in the hill suburbs around Karori, the hill portions of the suburb. Routes like 18, 21, 33 and 34 are ones where they're not as frequent, and there is a desire to have those more frequent. A thought was if the tower experiment is going to continue, something similar would be desirable, especially for elderly folk who live in the hill suburbs. They have difficulty getting up and down from there. Whether that is practical, of course, and whether that's financially viable, I mean, we'll leave you to decide. There is still a perception that there are lots of cancelled services and there are long waiting times. Now, my personal experience is that's not true, and that seems to be the case for most of the suburb. So maybe some how would we say, some sort of feedback on what the services are running like would be useful. The other thing was we tend to get clumps of buses coming through. Number 2 buses tend to get, by way of travel through the city, I think it is, that's causing it. They end up in groups. I have a saying that they come together for safety's sake, in groups of 2 or 3 at times. So I wondered if something could be done to spread them out a little bit better in that regard. Also for commuters, one of the things they've said to us is they would like park and ride facilities. That it could have an impact as high as 25% on the reduction of cars coming through the suburb. Those things are all in the papers you've got. So I think I heard the bell ring, so I will stop there.
That bell was 1 minute to go, I think, but happy to. So, yeah. Any questions, Councillor? Thank you very much for that and for the work. Yes, please, Councillor Wolf.
I'm proud of you guys. Thank you very much. This is a really detailed piece of work, which
Down to Derek and John.
Yeah, I have to say my name's on the page as part of the Residents Association. I had not a bit to do with this at all, and I just know the amount of work that went into this. It's a really good piece. I might be conflicted, and I might have a little bit of a bias, but I've seen a few of these come through in my 10 years at council, and this is one of the best pieces. It's truckload of data and information backed up by really good a good read. So yeah,
good teamwork with John Sinclair and Derek Neal here. Yeah, so.
It was also very helpful from the community itself. The commentary and stuff is really the comments from the community. It should give you a very good feel for what the thought of our community is.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I think Councillor Ponte. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, just one question. I know it's not the purpose of this survey, but as an association here, sort of falling back on the issue of park and ride, have you had recent conversations about the sort of where that might be in the Karori setting?
The two areas which seem people are looking at are Appleton Park and Karori Park area. Those two areas would be probably even with ourselves have been identified as the best places.
Thank you.
Just one thing. Do you think this will be a survey that will happen again? Is it a sort of a snapshot, or are you thinking you want to get a kind of rolling picture of trends?
To do it every few years, don't we? Really?
Yes, yeah, we're likely to. We had done an earlier one, but not to the depth of this one. And yes, we will certainly be. It gives us as a community association a good feel for what our community is thinking.
And I think the way we did it this time, doing the priorities and then drilling down, we got a lot more response than we did with the previous ones.
Yeah. Councillor Saul?
Cool. Thank you. I know you had emailed this out to us quite some when it first came out, so thanks for presenting it to us again. Just really appreciate the level of analysis that you provided of each of the different, I guess, perspectives amongst your community. It was really rich data and analysis. So I guess I was wondering about what the thoughts might be of when the Route 2 has some articulated buses on it. What are your thoughts and feelings on that, or what might be the community's thoughts and feelings on that? And you mentioned that sort of misperception that people had, or that perception people had of thinking that the buses weren't on time or cancelled and so forth, and suggested that there needed to be some better information to do that. Have you got any thoughts on how we might be able to do that? Or is it one of those things where I think over time that might abate?
I think it would over time, but it might be helpful to maybe I was trying to find something on the websites and that to be able to say, well, this is where you should look, but there wasn't anything. If there is some sort of feedback from by way of report or that would be good.
I wonder if maybe the transport chair and our chair could, and some of the ward councillors maybe could prepare some information and just send a letter to your association, and then you could disseminate that.
That would be fine.
I was also interested that in your analysis you'd mentioned about some of the issues around the air pollution from congestion and transport, and I know that there's so many young people, little people and growing people and elderly people in Karori. Is that an issue that people are aware of in terms of the impacts of that condition?
Probably not so much. There were a few comments, but not a lot. But it would be useful to reduce the amount of traffic on this, particularly going through in peak hours. I mean, it does get jammed up quite badly at times. Not as bad as Miramar, but it's certainly there.
And we also have quite often other providers will send us things they'd like posted out on our Facebook pages or email. So if you've ever got stats, or I mean, Darren sends through his updates, you know, we can share them out as well. So that's
Yeah.
Thank you very much. That's pretty much time. What we will do, thank you for coming in. What we'll do is we'll just been talking to Sam, we will get some specific responses, as specific and detailed as we can get, on the points you've raised around cancellations, punctuality, bunching of buses, and yeah, we can circulate them around and get them to you. And yeah, looking forward to an ongoing cooperation. So thanks for coming in.
having us.
Thank you.
Okay, next item of public participation is Jill Day from the Tawa Community Board. I think there's a few from the Tawa Community Board, and please come up and talking to the Tawa On Demand report, which is for us today. So thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
And I think we've got support from
We've got supporters.
city councillors as well. So thank you, Councillor McNulty, Councillor Randall. We're in your hands.
Cool.
Jill,
Kia ora koutou. Thank you very much for having us to speak to the committee today about the Tawa On Demand service, where we were time limited, so we're all going to talk quite fast because we've got a few things to share. We'd like to start by thanking you for establishing the On Demand trial in response to the advocacy from the Tawa Community Board back in 2021 and 2022. At that stage, we were hitting a crisis point with park and ride car parks overflowing and people opting to drive into town as it was more convenient and reliable than worrying about not being able to find a car park at the train station. As the data and feedback have shown, the service has been valued by the community. We also appreciate that you have worked collaboratively with the Tawa community and taken on feedback and made adjustments along the way. We'd like to acknowledge Stephen Hay for his incredible work during this time. And we also want to acknowledge the drivers who have got to know the people in our community and have done such a fantastic job. Today we would also like to table a petition in support of retaining public transport provision up into the hills of Tawa. The support has been incredible, and in just 12 days we have collected 1,871 signatures. We've also included comments that we received with the petition. Feedback provided to us in recent weeks has come in various ways and has demonstrated widespread appreciation for the service. It has also come with suggestions that further improvements could be made to the service, but that as a principle, having a local service which improves access in a hilly suburb which is experiencing housing density is greatly appreciated.
We are conscious that loneliness and limited access to community services is a growing issue in our suburb due to a confluence of reasons, for example, ageing population, disabilities and increasing financial precarity. Having a local bus service is a key piece of community infrastructure to help people to connect to one another and the services they need. In addition, the increased density of housing means that there is increasing pressure to find parking spaces for cars. Having effective and efficient public transport alternatives is essential in helping to reduce congestion, improve public safety, and improve environmental outcomes in our city. While we acknowledge many in our community will be disappointed in the decision not to continue the service as an on-demand offering, we welcome the opportunity to work with you to introduce a timetabled service. While we are disappointed that ongoing funding for on-demand cannot continue, we have read the paper and appreciate the work that has gone into looking at a future service which can attain NZTA FAR funding. We are supportive of the recommendation to establish a new fixed route as laid out in the paper, but we do have a few points that we would like the Greater Wellington Regional Council to consider. We would like to note that some aspects of the service were not fully explored during the pilot. For example, elderly and less financially stable residents were often unable to use the phone app due to the inability to pay for data, dated phones and/or lack of technical skills. It was also a barrier for residents without access to credit cards. We are aware that the new route has been modelled off data collected during the trial. We believe that the data collected during the trial is unlikely to completely align with the true demand for such a service. This is relevant to the proposed service as we strongly believe that the service needs to include the northern area of Linden, Coates Street, Tremuan Street and Bell Street area, an area with no and limited access to technology and also very limited access to transport and other services. For this reason, we request that Council considers taking the service up into the Northern Linden area.
We have concerns that the hourly service will not be sufficient during morning and evening commuter peaks, and therefore request that you consider a new option E. In paragraph 58, half hourly services Monday to Saturday, weekdays half hourly between 6 a.m. and 8 p.m, and then half hourly Saturday between 7 a.m. and 7 p.m. So there are many people who use the train services, and having a sufficiently frequent service to connect them at the key times will be a really important feature of successful uptake of a fixed service route. And the same applies to the movements of students around the suburbs, particularly to and from schools. We know that frequent services increase reliability and trust in services, and therefore will be likely to encourage those who have swapped their cars for the on-demand service to continue using that service. And we believe the benefit of increased service frequency will encourage more uptake of a timetabled service and reduce the number of individual car trips around Tawa. We also suspect that once the integrated fares come into place, it will be even more popular, and frequent patrons who use it for commuting will be more likely to use it on the weekends. So we think it will be really imperative that the services start with the quality and reliability that it believes it can deliver. We appreciate that the report acknowledges the ongoing opportunity of engaging with the Tawa community in the design of the fixed bus route. The Tawa Community Board welcomes this, and we also feel it's important to mention that alongside the board, there are communities that will have helpful insights and feedbacks to share, in particularly Longview, Somerset on the Landing, Age Concern, and the community in North London.
We've seen that Tawa residents are up for trying new things, and we know that people will adopt the new style of service, but we do request that some time is put into good communications about how the service will work. People may not know where the virtual bus stops are, or even know how that when the bus will be coming past their place. We think the suggested approach in the report has a very real possibility of helping achieve your goal of 40% increase in mode shift by 2030, with the proviso that frequency and reliability are key to that success. We look forward to working with you as you design this new service. Kia ora. Sorry, that was a bit long.
No, that was good. That was really good. I think you hit the yeah. No, I think you got the balance exactly right between talking fast but not talking too fast.
I wanted to also acknowledge that we've got our two councillors who are sit on the board with us as well.
Yes,
today.
great. It's great to have you all here today,
Yeah.
and thank you very much for that. I also meant to say at the beginning, congratulations to the Tawa community and Tawa College in particular for the match-winning performances at the Cricket World Cup. Very important and impressive. So we'll open up for questions. So Councillor Conley.
Sorry, this isn't a question, more of a comment, but given Councillor Wolf has allowed one before, I'm hoping I'll get another one as well. So I just really wanted to thank the Tawa Community Board for their engagement in this process. We've had discussions as to whether the trial can be considered a success, and I think undoubtedly it has been really successful. Not only has it provided a new form of transport for a lot of people who couldn't access public transport before then, but it's provided really rich kind of data for us in terms of when and where a similar service could be rolled out for the rest of the region. And so I think it's been amazing, and I think it's a really useful tool now in our toolkit, and I just hope that future governments can see the benefit in this kind of service and will come to the fore with some funding for alternatives that don't just meet our bus driving along fixed routes and stopping at fixed stops kind of model. I also really wanted to thank you for your kind of flexibility around, seeing that whilst the Tawa On Demand trial was a success, it is quite costly, and we're under a lot of financial pressure in the public transport space trying to make our dollars go a long way. And so, I've been really heartened to hear you today coming on board and kind of getting on board with a fixed route. And I just really wanted to thank you for thinking about, how we can make that better and engaging in the information that you do have. So I think that's really, really useful. And I'm encouraging staff to kind of take on board your comments, particularly around Linden, and whether we can accommodate that in a proposal moving forward. So thanks a lot.
Kia ora.
You, Councillor Connolly. Any other? Councillor Lee.
Thank you. Yes, I think this was probably it's not one of our better initiatives. I think it's a great initiative, and I'm pretty confident we won't see the last of it. I think it's just going into hibernation, and I think this will be the way of the future. But in terms of the barriers, what was the biggest barrier? Was it the technology, having to use the app? So that was the biggest showstopper for some of the demographic.
It really was, because there's still a number of people in community that don't have access either to data when they're outside of their home environment, or actually just have that sort of technology, particularly in Tawa. But there was a real, and we acknowledge that the idea of having a call centre is quite an expensive change. But obviously, if you did spread it across the region more, there would be some more ability to do that in the future. And we certainly do encourage you to continue to think about this for the future, because it actually really was very successful. I think with a few more tweaks, it would have been really good.
Thank you. And I think it is about timing. I think that the future will be an on-demand type of service, and that will be the new normal.
We do hope that you keep lobbying the government to consider this sort of thing, because we know that it's got huge potential to really get people out of cars. So, great.
Thank you, Councillor Lee. Councillor Saul?
Thank you, community, and again, congratulations on your amazing ability to crack out white ferns. It is truly extraordinary. I wish the on-demand service could take some credit for it. But, keep quiet. Just a couple of things. Just as you know, we have a $134 million shortfall in our funding from the National Land Transport Fund, and given that shortfall, we have to make a tricky decision here, and there are a few options in front of us. So just from the community's perspective, there has been a suggestion of considering a local targeted rate. How do you think that might, what the appetite would be for that in your community, since there is such support and keenness to retain the service? And then my second question is, if as we will be considering also a fixed route service, can you see a similar uptake and support of that? Will passengers be able to? Why do I always get the bell? And it's like the pips, man. Just wanted to know what work we might need to do there for passengers to shift towards a fixed route service, or is it that it's on demand or nothing?
I think people will adapt to something new as long as they understand how it works. So I do think the communications is really important. And I think if people have some security of knowing that the bus will come past a certain time, that will really help. That was one of the challenges with the trial, was some of the wait times were quite variable. So actually this could be an improvement. And then the other one was around the targeted rate. I mean, obviously you have to consult on that. So that would be a real important point for the residents of Tawa. But I guess to a certain extent, it could be quite a feasible option. To look at that, but then I guess the argument against that is other services have, other communities have services similar up into the hills, and they're not paying at a targeted rate, so that could be a bit of a challenging one to argue. But it's not on demand anymore; it's a hail.
Was the rate only for on demand, targeted rate?
I think, yeah.
Yeah, because it's not on demand anymore. This one, it's because it's a fixed route. It'll be hailed. So.
Oh, we've got other options.
Oh, cool.
One option was retain with.
Would retain with a targeted rate. I think it would be quite tricky to do, just because of the fact that there is variable security in the time frames, and people would get frustrated if they know they're paying more and not able to use it properly.
So then it would be there'd be a bit more support for a fixed route service then. Yeah,
I think probably at this point, yeah.
If it was half hourly.
Okay, yes. Double bell from Lucas. That's it. Hey, thanks so much for coming in. Thank you all for coming together.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being willing to give this a trial too. We really appreciate it.
Indulge me for 10 seconds. I just want to say thank you. Innovation is really hard in local government. We know that. And you put something that's really innovative. So we do appreciate the work that's been done on that.
Thanks.
Do we
want to do the petition?
Cool. Thank you. Sorry. Good.
And just to acknowledge the petition, we have received that, and we will do something with it. We'll send it round. So thanks very much. Okay, next item of public participation is on the same topic, Tawa On Demand report, and this is from Graham Aitken and Dennis Latham, who are residents at Somerset on the Landing in Porirua. Thank you for coming in. We're in your hands.
The red button's on, I'm told, so we're live. Thank you. Good morning, councillors. Good morning, councillor officers. My name is Dennis Latham, and with me this morning is Graham Aiken. And Graham and I are residents of Somerset on the Landing at Kenepuru, Porirua City. And Somerset on the Landing is a retirement resort with over 400 residents and staff. And the Greater Landing, that's adjacent to the Porua community, to the Kenepuru Community Hospital now, in the old hospital grounds that were the old hospital grounds, is a newly built suburb with over 1,200 residents and potential for greater future development. Now, a little bit of history. About 2 years ago, Councillor Kirkbanand referred us to Council officers Stephen Hay and Leanne Harris to see if Greater Wellington could extend the on-demand bus service to Somerset on the Landing, as we were just outside the boundary of the bus route. This was agreed, and Stephen Hay and his team visited twice to explain the service and to help our residents set up the apps on their mobile phones. A well-used asset was added on the 23rd of November last year when the service was extended to the Porua CBD. The on-demand bus is extremely popular with residents, especially those who don't drive anymore, and particularly those who may have slight mobility issues. Sometimes the bus can visit 6 or more times a day. In fact, I used it just yesterday, and the driver said to me, "This is the 7th time I've been up here today." That was before 1 p.m. So currently there is no scheduled bus service on the Landing. So if the on-demand bus was terminated, residents of the resort would need to walk either to the hospital at Kenepuru or to Kenepuru Drive to the nearest bus stop. This is about a 10 to 15 minute walk for me to each stop. Now, unfortunately, some of our population would find this difficult, as the average age of our residents is in the late 70s and early 80s. And some of the walking includes the hill and exposure to the elements. Now, from the Transport Committee papers that we received on Monday, the on-demand trial demonstrated that there is a demand for transport service in Tawa beyond what is currently available. In particular for Granada North, Green Acres, Tawa West, and now we're suggesting Somerset on the Landing and the wider Landing. The Regional Public Transport Plan adopted by Greater Wellington states that Metlink will improve access to public transport by tailoring services to meet community needs. We have a need. We have designated bus stops on the Landing, but no bus service. It would be a great shame if the on-demand bus service was terminated, as it is a popular and convenient transport asset. But as we've just noticed and just heard, of course, you have a funding shortfall, and we recognise that. We also note that on page 28 of the committee paper, of the 3 options to be considered, option 1 is the preferred option that states a new and fixed route in Tawa. This would meet the criteria for FAR funding. Now, we're also aware, of course, that the procedure to legislate for bus route changes is pretty enormous. And so may we suggest then an extension north of Linden Station to Reiha Street, Hospital Drive, a loop around Kariaria Drive, onto Bluff Road, into Somerset, and we have a weatherproof covered drive-through area there, out to Pateki Drive, a loop of Kenepuru Hospital, back onto Kenepuru Drive and off to Tawa. And we have a Google map here too that we can leave that could show this route. So what we ask is that during your deliberations, the Greater Wellington Regional Council gives strong consideration to include the Landing and Somerset in particular with its diverse transport needs. Graham, you?
Yes, it's vitally important that we do have some sort of link to bus transport. The other thing is that Somerset are quite comfortable with a smaller bus coming up like the on-demand bus does now. So they are, speaking on their behalf, they are agreeable to the bus coming through there to pick up passengers. But I do acknowledge from the Tawa Community Board as well, technology with some of our people is a bit of a challenge, and that's probably the biggest fallback on on the issue with people wanting to use the on-demand bus. But otherwise, it's really, really been well supported. One other thing, if we were going to continue with the on-demand buses, the bus can be up there 5 times in about an hour. Is whether it's possible to on a computer or something that the driver sees that the bus is already coming to Somerset on the landing. Well, why send 2 buses up when you can send 1? Thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you, Dennis and Graham. Great points. So we've got a question from Councillor Kirk Bernand.
Thank you, Dennis and Graham, for that. I was just going to ask Dennis, when we were looking at the area, I think we tried to see whether we could get our regular buses going through there, and there were restrictions because of the tightness of the road, and I think one of the bridges there. So if we're looking at a timetable service, again, it needs to be these smaller buses, doesn't it?
Correct.
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah, that was the point I just wanted to make. Thank you for that. Thank you for your submission. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Kirk Bernand, Councillor Lee, and then Councillor Connolly.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. The on-demand buses, they were all wheelchair accessible. Just from your experience, were they utilised? The fact that they were small buses and they were wheelchair accessible.
Most people, I can't recall seeing people with wheelchairs, but certainly people with walkers and the like certainly used it. But I can't recall about wheelchairs, but I know they are wheelchair accessible, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah, but me personally, I haven't seen anyone use the wheelchair, but I no doubt that they do.
But it was a more convenient. I mean, just having smaller buses.
Oh, absolutely. And the other thing is that we've got a covered area where it takes a few seconds or minutes to get people onto the bus. That's all completely covered, so they don't have to worry about rain and strong wind and the like. It's covered in.
Great, thank you.
Yep. I think there was, I'm not Councillor Connolly, but just on that point, I think there was something like 10 or 15 consistent total mobility users of the service across the trial. So not a huge number, but a number that would have been very reliant on it. So Councillor Connolly and then Councillor Staples.
Just for clarification, the Tawa Community Group mentioned in addition that they were proposing at the top of the proposed fixed route. Is that the same addition that you are looking for, or is it separate? Sorry, I don't have a good understanding of the geography.
Well, I had a question. The definition of a new and fixed route. What is a fixed route? Is that certain bus stops? Is that...
So it will go on a defined path, I think is it. But we're proposing instead of fixed stops, there would be optionality along that designated route. But what you're proposing is a different alternative to what the Tawa Community Group were proposing. I'm just seeing nods down the back.
I think just an extension more than, that's just a little extension north.
Yeah. We're right on the boundary of the Wellington City Council area.
Yeah, it's a further extension. So we will talk more about all of this obviously when we get to the agenda item. But just trying to get through the quick. Okay, sure. No, we've got time. Okay, yeah. We're coming up with this. This will be coming up very shortly for further discussion in the item. So that was micro. Yeah, we will talk about these specific issues when we come to the item. And there's quite a lot of interesting points there that we will consider. So that's it for questions. Thank you.
Thank you
if
for
you
the
can stay,
opportunity.
if you can stay, we'll probably be talking about this. I'd say in half an hour, 20 minutes. So
thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, possibly more like 5 minutes. Okay, so that's it for public. Is there any more public participation? Don't see any. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you very much. Okay, that's it for public participation on the paper. So item number 4, we're going to confirm our minutes from the last meeting we had on the 19th of September. So Councillor Laban is moving those, Councillor Bassett seconding. All those in favour of confirming those minutes, please say aye. Those against, that's carried. Thank you very much. And then item 5, we will have an update on progress on the action items. So Sam, anyways.
Thank you and kia ora, councillors. So action items update in the pack, just a few of them I'll make a comment on. Public Transport On Demand Review, that's the next report on this agenda. We'll deal with that today. In relation to the rail network performance and funding challenges, we have got a workshop after this meeting where we'll talk a bit further about some of those aspects. The 15th of August action regarding RTI 2.0, we will bring a presentation to you next month on that, but today in the back of the room we do have a one of the new signs that you can have a look at, and during the break we'll be able to talk you through that. RPTP review, we've got a report on this agenda in terms of updating the timeframes, and the Main Station, there is a visit next Wednesday morning to deal with that item. And in relation to the KCDC and the Parapara Umu Railway Station, following the workshop that we had last week, we're considering options for Parapara Umu, and that will be part of NLTF funding decisions which will be made by Council next week.
Thanks, Sam. I can see Councillor Duthie.
Morena councillors, Morena officers and public in attendance. Sam, a question around the mitigation options for the Melling station closure. I'm just aware the timing, there's decisions expected later this year, December perhaps, and there's talk of construction starting early next year. So at what point in time, I guess, do we get to look at the mitigation options in advance of construction actually kicking in? Especially with the Christmas break, creating a sort of a little hiatus in between perhaps decisions being made in December and then it all being go, if it is go, in the new year.
Thanks, Councillor. I think we will have an opportunity to socialise our ideas about that once a decision is made. I think, you know, construction mobilisation will take a reasonable length of time. We wanted at least 6 months to be able to mobilise any options, and we're confident we'll have at least that period of time. So I don't think we need to be too concerned about that, you know, rushing upon us and us needing to do something really quickly. So once we have the decisions, whether that's in December or whatever that time frame is, then we can, you know, we'll plan the next steps and we'll keep you informed about that and engaged about that.
Thanks very much. So I want to switch that mic off. Sorry. Any other questions on this item? Good update, I think. Things are moving along. Thanks. Okay, next item. Item 6, Public Transport Tower On Demand Trial Assessment and Future Options. So we've heard a decent amount on this from public participation, and obviously a very good report in front of us that we've had a chance to look at. So yeah, we'll go into it. Alex is here, and Michael's here as well. So yeah, we're in your hands.
Right, good morning councillors. This report provides councillors with an assessment of the Tower On Demand trial and sets out future options for councillors to consider. I'd like to acknowledge the Tower Community Board, who we have worked with on the Tower trial from the very beginning. I'd also like to acknowledge Mana and their drivers, who are represented here today by Craig Chin, Chief Executive, Mana. The trial has provided valuable insights, and while this paper recommends it finishes, as scheduled on 31st of December, we propose a new service for Tower to help maintain local access to public transport in Tower. There are no updates to this report since it was drafted. Michael and I are happy to take any questions.
Thanks very much. Just acknowledge Stephen Hayes just wandered in, so welcome along. Good timing. Okay, so questions, Councillor Staples.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, my question is around the vehicles that we're currently using for the on-demand. My understanding, if I hope my brain remembers correctly, we commissioned those as specific purpose-built vehicles for the on-demand trial. So what is the opportunity? We've heard from the residents of the retirement village that they'd be more than happy with a smaller vehicle. So what is the opportunity for repurposing these vehicles to perhaps meet the needs that the community is coming to talk to us about?
Yes, through you, Chair. The proposal at this stage is that we actually continue to use the same vans and drivers. Those vehicles have proven very suitable for the nature of some of the hilly local streets in this area, and that Mana have a number of drivers that are very familiar with the customers and the environment, and in fact provide us invaluable information on exactly where people are using the current service.
Thanks, Councillor Staples. Councillor Lee, and then Kirk Burnett.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. First, I'd like to thank all the staff because it's been a great initiative. We kicked off a lot of very, well, not the first, but really good projects in the last 2 trimesters. I think Airport Express was one of them. The Accessibility Charter and the Plan was another one, and the Tower on Demand. I think it is a true success story, but you said it was coming to an end, but it's not really coming to an end, isn't it? Because we still have the intellectual property, which I'm sure we're going to freely share. And do you believe that this will, once funding is attained again, do you think on demand will probably be the normal going forward?
Through your Chair, that's probably an area I can't really comment on. Maybe
Through you, Chair, thanks for the question, Councillor. I think the MR Cagney report, which is attached to the report, does identify that there are some particular characteristics that you'd look for in that where on-demand services are best placed. We don't really have any of those areas in the Wellington region, so I think at the moment our focus is really going to be on fixed route services, and it will be if the recommendation of this report is adopted, then they're looking at a fixed route service on a hail and ride basis is something that is a bit different for us as well. That will be good to see how that pans out, how that works.
Thank you.
Thanks, Sam. Councillor Kirk Burnett is next.
Thank you. Just coming back to the submissions that were made there, when we're talking about the timetable service on an hourly basis and that, does that give us the ability to extend it into the southern part, which would cover the Somerset area and that? And secondly, with the hourly service and that, is that generally going to be outside of peak time, or are we also doing that at peak time and that? Because it seems to me from a lot of the information we have, although there is use at peak time, there's a lot of use in between those areas, and I'm thinking if we were concentrating there, that may actually allow us that extension. So if you comment on that, please.
Yes, thank you. Through the Chair. Yes, the insight from the current trial has shown that there is demand both in peak and inter-peak during the day in Tawa, and the insight was that there was a need to provide a service that covered the full span of the daytime, not so much the evening, and that usage was very low on the weekends. There were particularly identified workers, for instance, in the industrial area at Granada North, and a number of other users. So there's a number of options that have been costed in this paper, but the intention of the hourly, which is roughly $500,000 per annum, is that would be hourly from around 6 in the morning till around 7 o'clock at night. Oh, and with regard to the Linden area, that wasn't shown in the map, but the service could be extended to serve that Linden area.
Yes, so if I could ask then that they do investigate extending it to that area, and also I'm supportive of such test runs and trials, just like the on-demand, which didn't get the numbers right for us, but I think it's important that we are putting money into test trials and into experimenting different areas. And I mention that because the airport was one that we were unsure of, and that's worked out very, very soundly for us. And so thank you very much.
Thank you. One of the things, just a thought in my mind before we carry on with questions, is that I've been thinking maybe when we come to debate and the recommendations, we could add another one if we wanted, around like agreeing to consider the feedback from the Tawa Community Board and the residents of Somerset on the landing in relation to the design of the new fixed route service, including peak hour coverage and geographic coverage. That would be something that we could do that as a response, investigate or something like that. So let's just keep it in our mind. Do you want to? Oh, well, you have something you prepared earlier. Okay, all right. Well, maybe. Sorry, I should have known. Okay. Well, anyway, that's just that ruminate for a bit, and we'll go to the next question from Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Yeah, obviously there's a lot of positives, and it's unfortunate that we're looking to put this to one side. I noticed in points 3 and 4 that we'd looked at other alternatives, and I had a look at the Cagney report, and I was just wondering if there was any thoughts to private-public partnership in regards to supporting something like a community bus with lotteries, grants, or going out to, say, super shuttles or Wellington TAC combined. I say that in regards to a comment that was made by a couple of the Tawa Community Board also, that they thought that the pricing was generous and that people would take on board a larger payment. I'm just wondering if that's been looked at.
Through you, Chair. The challenge is with on demand is the delta between, first to address your second point first, the delta between the fare and the actual cost of the service is actually so large that the fare would have to be increased considerably to move towards what would be considered to be good value for money from a public transport service. So whilst at the moment $3 people using the service say they will pay slightly more, I think we'd probably have to move the fare up into the region of about $10 for it to be. And if you're using it twice a day, which most people do, that would be $20 a day to take it to something which would give what we call a reasonable fare box recovery. So that's the first point about working with other people, other organisations in the community. There have been some attempts at running on-demand service privately in New Zealand. In fact, Transdev, who own Mana coach services, tried in Auckland, and it's for the same reason that that we have challenges with fare box recovery. It's not commercially viable for a private organisation because they can't charge a high enough fare to recover the costs of running the service. And the MR Cagney report, I think, is quite clearly demonstrates that as the service gets more popular, to actually maintain the service, you have to add additional vehicles, and that the cost of adding that additional vehicle becomes prohibitive and actually makes the service unviable, particularly in this particular region.
Thank you. We've got some words from Councillor Ponter, and we're just considering them against the other words that I'd already written down, and there'll be some sort of process of word merge. Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. So our proposal is for a hail and ride service. Now, this is something I'm not familiar with in the Wellington region, but the report notes that it is used elsewhere. What's our feedback from passengers in terms of the success, I guess, of hail and ride versus a fixed stop? I mean, do we have complaints about people hailing and not getting picked up, or what's been our experience of how hail and ride works from a passenger point of view, please?
Yes, through you, Chair. We use hail and ride, for instance, on the local streets up in Otaki on the Route 290. My understanding is it's very well regarded in that community because customers have the flexibility on the bus to tell the driver to request the driver drop them at the location that's most convenient. And it gives customers the flexibility that if maybe they can't walk the distance to the nearest bus stop, they can stand on a street corner that is along the bus route and flag the bus.
Thank you. Next is Councillor Staples.
Thank you for allowing me another bite at the pie. I probably should know this, but because it's not a route that's right under my nose, I've forgotten. How do people currently pay on the on-demand? And if we were to, is it Snapper? And if it isn't, will the new route be Snapper enabled?
So currently the only way to pay on demand, through you, Chair, currently the only way to pay on demand is using the app and a credit card, which actually does exclude some members of the community, as the Tile Community Board did highlight. We believe that the fixed route will be more available to a wider part of the community because everybody will be able to use their Snapper card to tag on and tag off.
Thank you. Councillor Duffy coming back. Yep.
Yeah, thank you. Questions more broadly about public transport on demand, and particularly in relation to the Cagney report. Do we see a future for public transport on demand in Wellington, or is that analysis effectively concluding that it's not viable? And will we continue to seek NZTA to include public transport demand as a far-funded option in future?
Through you, Chair, I guess the key with one of the key findings in that MR Cagney report was there are a number of areas where on-demand could provide a better customer service, but what it highlights is at a higher cost. And I guess ultimately, and that's where I have to defer to Sam and to others, there is the council's willingness, I guess, to fund that additional cost for those additional services. And there was a second piece.
Will we continue to lobby NZTA to include on-demand funding? Yeah, Sam.
Yeah, just in terms of that, I think we are keen that there would be ideally funding available for any mode of public transport, which could be suitable in any part of the country. So I think through our work with the TC, the Transport Interest Group, we would continue to lobby for that because there will be places in the country where it will be appropriate, even if Wellington isn't one of them.
Yeah, I mean, that is a key question, though, Councillor Duffy. Our decision has kind of been made for us by NZTA not providing funding for on-demand services to continue at the moment. So in a way, that's sort of it made our decision. Well, it took the decision sort of out of our hands in a way. It would have been a different decision if that funding had been available. So. Okay, is that all the questions? One from Councillor Connolly.
I was also just going to add that obviously, new development continues to happen. So in the future, there may be areas which are suitable for on-demand. I didn't realise that you had to pay for the on-demand using a credit card, which surely that would have ruled out basically any children that weren't travelling with their parents. So this is going to, as well as people that were struggling with access to technology. So, this is going to open it up to a whole bunch more people, I would have thought. And kids are massive public transport users because you can't drive when you're under 16. So,
you need to have an account on the app linked to a credit card, so you could use it as a kid. You'd just be using exactly, yeah. Or if they didn't, or if they didn't, exactly, yeah, or debit card, yeah. Okay, well, is that good? Have we exhausted the questioning? Should we go to the debating? So yeah, just before we start, maybe so, Councillor Ponta got your words, and then we had some words. Just what I'm thinking is there's a couple of additional elements we might want to look at. So maybe we need a couple of different new recommendations. One would be welcoming the feedback that we've got from the Tawa Community Board and residents of Somerset on the Landing, and the second would be around inviting the chief exec to come back to a future transport committee meeting. Might not necessarily be able to be the next one because it might be too soon, but a future one on the logistics costs and funding for a fixed route in Tawa, including options to extend it to Linden and Kinepuru, and considering half-hourly peak service. That doesn't mean we're going to do that. That means we're going to consider it and investigate it. Cost it. So that's maybe here's some scribbles there.
Mr. Chair, would we put the Somerset one and that as well to be investigated?
Yes, that's the point that they made is included in those words that I just read out. Maybe we can get those on the screen, and then we can think about that. But does anybody else want to say? Councillor Lee, would you like to kick us off in debate?
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I'm happy to support the recommendations. Deeply disappointed about the fact that the trial is going to come to an end, but happy that all the IP is going to be retained and probably used in hopefully another future, probably more than just a trial, probably a better rollout. But it's all about cost. It's all about money. And cost is quite relative. I mean, yes, $1.4 million is a lot of money, but it equates to one bus shelter, which was on the Golden Mile. 1.4 million. It was the cost of one bus shelter to keep this trial running. And it's also, I mean that's gone, of course, because of government funding. But then if you look at it, 1.4 million, that was in the Let's Get Wellington Moving program. That equated to 10 or 11 days of Let's Get Wellington Moving program. 10 or 11 days to fund a whole year of an exceptional service. So it's all relative. So that's my rant. Thank you.
Yes, please do.
Thank you. Yeah. And again, the point in bringing up the Somerset thing there is that the population concentration there is higher than in any of the other areas we're looking at, and so that in itself is a good incentive to bring it. The house sites are smaller, the houses are closer together, and we've got high-rise housing in there through the area as well. So I think that could make it more viable as I see it. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Next is Councillor Staples.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I remember when we set this up, and some of the comments around the table were, well, it won't just be a trial because you can't take away from people something that you've given them. And we are just about to do that. And I find it really quite sad, but we have no choice. I mean, we can't put our heads in the sand. We actually have no choice. Our transport budgets are totally under the pump. We're looking at deficits that are not getting any smaller. So for me, the fact that we have had two presentations well thought out from our community, asking for a little more, not a huge amount more, a little more, which will make a big difference to them. I'm really happy to support that, and I'm sincerely hoping that our officers can find a way to make not demands. They're not demanding; they're asking. So yes, I do hope that we can find somewhere in the pot, if we have to drop doing something else, to meet these people's needs, because they're real. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Staples. Councillor Bassett.
Can I just sort of add to that? I think when we're doing those investigations coming back to us, I would expect that we would see a costing in there, not only for setting it up, but also from an ongoing point of view, what that would be. And that would be part of our decision in considering.
I think I've just on that. I've just been reminded that we're debating illegitimately at the moment because we haven't moved or seconded the thing, so we're just sort of freewheeling in the most totally irresponsible way. We are just talking, isn't it? It's just having a yarn. So we probably should. So does somebody want to move the recommendations? Yeah, Councillor Staples is moving them, and Councillor Cooper is seconding them. So thank you for that. Yeah, it's brilliant. I know we can retrofit the. It's okay. Anyway, that's fine. So let's all tidy that up. They're very happy over here. Great. So, Councillor Bassett, yeah, your point I think about the costing. So what we've got on the paper so far is that it can be met within existing budgets, and I think the costing is. It's tricky to say because it depends if you are going to do some of these things, like extending the route and having half-hourly frequency at peak times, then that's going to expand the costing probably. So I think the best we can do is that we know we can meet it within existing budgets. Is that right? Just nod or shake your head, or Yeah.
We can come with an information report that seems feasible.
Yeah, there will be for our decision. This is the question, right? Like, do we? Yeah, the next report we get on this will most likely be a for information report. So we're making the decision now to set up a fixed route service within our existing budgets. That can be met within our existing budgets. So yeah, that's fine. Okay. Next is Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. So I support the recommendations. My comment relates to recommendation 3 and the broader picture of public transport on demand. So I'm happy to support this, noting recommendation that currently there are no opportunities for PT on demand. And the main reason is that the lack of fast subsidy effectively ties our hands on that. But I do want to note in debate here that in the analysis, the option of public transport on demand in the Western Hills was extremely close in cost terms, only slightly more, probably within a margin of estimate error. And I also note that the analysis there would, to switch to PT on demand in the Western Hills, would replace 6 buses with 4 vans, potentially freeing up 2 buses for other routes. So I do think there is possible merit in future in some parts of the region and in the Western Hills of Lower Hutt in particular. The other reason why I think it's currently not a good idea is because of the coming disruption around the Melling station change, and so to introduce additional change would probably disadvantage commuters. So I don't think the time is right. Happy to support the recommendation, but I do think there is potential in the Western Hills because of the possibility of using fewer and smaller buses, which would free up capital resource for buses across the fleet, which we're quite short on. So I just wanted to note that in debate, but I'm going to support all the recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duffy. Good points there, I think. And next is Councillor Saw and then Councillor Ropata.
debate, right? So I don't have to ask a question, even though I just did, so I'm covered. Yeah. I just wanted to actually acknowledge the MetLink team working with the community. It's just such a great example of local solutions, like a council working or a PTA working with a community to find solutions, essentially to satisfy, I guess, a dated form of urban development that puts us in these pickles. So looking in the long term, I can see other parts of our work with our regional policy statement and so forth that tries to nip these things in the bud before we're here all these years, decades later, trying to sort of retrospectively find solutions. So just wanted to acknowledge the solution-oriented, collaborative, and I guess very prudent way that we have gone about this. So thank you for all the learning and dedication.
Very important point about land use, urban form, and transport. Councillor Ropata.
Morena koutou, ngā mihi nui kia koutou, and a big mihi to our community who showed up this morning. I just wanted to reinforce or echo Chris's and Adrian's comments about the voice of our community. And I think that when I think about this, this is a really good example of land ends in Kenepuru being a one of our growing little communities. And we talk about building communities that have access to better public transport. And I think that actually, if we were to extend it to Kenepuru landings, that would be a fantastic outcome for our older people in our communities, which we need to manaaki. So I'm all for our officials finding a way for extending the bus route so that actually it can capture people so they can travel to Raiha Street and other places in Linden. So I just wanted to put my support in for that. Kia ora.
Kia ora, Councillor Pata. Really appreciate that. Is there any other points in debate? Otherwise, I might say something and then ask our mover if they want to come back. I was just going to say, just to echo all the comments about the good work that's gone into this and the success of the trial, and it is very disappointing not to have the funding assistance to allow us to continue. I think we don't exactly know what the decision would have been on this trial had we had that funding from the government available, but I suspect it would be different from what we're doing now. We could have kept going, we could have learnt more, we could have done other things. And as others have said, we may do that in the future if funding does become available. One of the things I wanted to say on the plus side is that in the literature on on-demand public transport services, one of the ideal applications of on-demand public transport services is introducing public transport into an area which currently has none, developing a culture of public transport use, and then converting the on-demand service into a fixed route service, which is more financially sustainable and basically better because it's timetabled and gives people is more open to more people. And that is exactly what we're doing here. So there's a sense of mixed feelings for me, at least, that it's disappointing, very disappointing, but it's also a good application of how on-demand can work. And I think the point that you made, Councillor Saw, about the cost of transport in certain types of urban development, that is a very salient point. And we, as a regional planning authority, that is right in our wheelhouse. Right, we need to be thinking about how we can influence urban design and urban development that keeps the costs of transport down, because we simply can't afford to provide transport services for certain types of urban development in the future. And we can probably talk about that more another time. We've been doing some thinking about how we could approach that specific question. So that was my points. Thank you, everybody, for all of the work. Councillor Staples, do you want to say anything right of reply? No, thank you very much. So then we'll put those motions to the vote. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Those against? So that's carried. Thank you very much for that, and thanks to the community again for coming in. Should we take a break? Quick break? Yeah, a quick break, and then we'll come back. So thanks very much. Time that we will come back is maybe 11. Might as well, 11? Yeah.
David will be showing that to us.
Okay. And also, for those in the room, the Should we start again? Emmett, I can see Emmett. I always like to call out Emmett just because, you know, I don't know why really. But, okay, that's all right. Okay. Ready to go for the next set of items. So, item number 7 is Route 2 electric articulated vehicles. So yeah, we've got Hamish and Michael and also Gareth. So we're in your hands.
Thank you, Chair. Morning, councillors. This report provides the committee with an update on the project to introduce electric articulator buses to Route 2 to deal with capacity issues on our busiest route, which is also constrained by tunnels. The project is being separated in 2 stages, so Karori to Courtney Place and Courtney Place to Miramar Seatoon. And the project is progressing well, and we hope to have 5 EOVs operating between Karori and Courtney Place from 2026. I note one small update in the report. The percentage referenced in relation to the additional capacity of EAVs at paragraph 11 should be 65% rather than 71%. There are no further updates to the report since it was drafted. Michael, Gareth and I are happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much. Good report. Councillor Lee.
I thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a real simple question. So when you talk about infrastructure changes, is it just extending the bus stops? Is that the only problem? I think from paragraphs 19 through to about 26.
Through the chair, yeah. The infrastructure changes that are needed is making bus stops high capacity. So the Karori through to Courtney Place stuff's pretty much been done through the Karori Connections work. There are also some roundabouts, intersections, etc., that do need some modification for the full project.
Thank you. Got Councillor Kirkland and then Councillor Wolf and then Councillor Ponto.
Yeah, thank you. I see that the funding for these is in the long-term plan, so that's great. Is there any significant cost in updating and changing the bus stops and that sort of thing? Because that wouldn't have been in the long-term plan. Can you comment on that, please?
Through the chair. Yeah, so there is costs associated, obviously, with upgrading them. We had included it in the NLTP funding. So working through with Tim and the strategy team to see how we address that. Yeah, it's not massive money.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Just wondering if there's going to be any further trials, particularly incorporating passengers and probably members of our community that might be challenged in some way, shape, or form. And we're obviously linking in with PTAG. Is that?
Through the chair, we are intending to run a second trial in probably January. It's dependent on a number of things in terms of the availability of the bus from Auckland, and we're about to start workshopping that with WCC, Wellington City Council, ensure that they're happy with the results of the any further work we do in terms of trials, and also with Kinetic, the operator. The idea of that being that we are all completely comfortable with articulated buses running, not just on stage 1, Karori to CBD, but all the way through. As part of that, we will certainly be looking at how to engage with residents associations, etc., and whether they would want to participate in some way.
Yeah.
Adding to that comment relating direct engagement with our passengers on the design, we are being very deliberate about getting the disability community and have their input into the layout of the buses.
Thank you very much. Councillor Ponto. So in paragraph 11, it talks about these buses having capacity for 112 passengers. How many of those are standing and how many of those are seated?
Through the chair, so I can't recall off the top of my head, there is a lower percentage seated than with ELV, so we will have more people standing.
Right. So the reason for raising the question is in 2018 we walked into a problem, and it was more particularly with the users of Route 2, just because I think of the buses, and perhaps that we did have a little bit of targeting on that route where we removed seats from buses, and we got quite a bit of pushback, and when I think in most cases over time we put those seats back onto the buses. So is there a quite apart from how you get on and off these buses and any education campaign around that, how are we going to warm the community up to the fact that more of them will simply be standing on these buses, even though they're modern flash electric buses? Just before you answer that, there will be more seats on the articulated buses than on an existing ELV. It's just the proportion of seats will be lower, if you see what I mean. So a new articulated bus will have more seats and more seating capacity in it than an existing ELV on the number 2 route.
Through the chair, unfortunately, Paul, who co-authored the paper, is the person that we really need to comment on this, and he's unavailable. So perhaps we could report back on it. But that's one of the reasons that the numbers changed. That percentage that was referred to is we're working through the final configuration, and I do recall that one of the things that's been taken into account following the earlier feedback that we gained from the disability sector was the configuration of the accessible area at the front of the bus. So I suspect that these things have been taken into account, but it would certainly be preferable if we could report back on that in terms of how the bus configuration decisions have been made.
So my reason for raising it isn't that I have a concern with it. It is that the last time we did a poor job in actually fronting the fact that this was happening, and then got it in the neck as a consequence. So yeah, that's a good point. Sam?
Yeah. Thanks, through Chair. I think ahead of us introducing these buses into service, we will make sure that we are doing, engagement with the community around how to use the bus, how it's going to be different, and just to manage expectations and to make sure they can be used properly. So yes, we're definitely planning to do that work.
Thanks, Sam. Councillor Connolly.
I have a couple of questions, but just on the standing issue. Roads in Wellington are windy, and when you're standing, it can be a dangerous game on a bus in Wellington. Different experience to driving around a bus in Hamilton, for example. So, just thinking about all those other things like what do they call them? The hangy things and the pillars and stuff. The hangy things are often way too high for people, even my height, and I'm quite tall. Just thinking about those things to make people comfortable on the journey as well. Two questions from me. At paragraph 5, you say we're undertaking a review of future projects, but this project isn't expected to be in the review due to its advanced stage of procurement and funding certainty. I didn't understand what that meant. Also, with these buses, we've talked a lot about the infrastructure changes that will be needed to accommodate those buses. And I wonder if those infrastructure changes are, when I say entirely necessary, they'll certainly be necessary on the Karori route. But if you had to redeploy one of these buses to another route, would that be possible? Because, the way we're doing with our contracts now, having these as a transferring asset coming back to us, we might end up with the asset, but a different supplier on that route, and we might be looking to use these buses somewhere else. And I'm just wondering if they are so if you have to change the route so much that these buses would be of no value anywhere else on our network.
Through you, Chair, to answer your second point first, the transferring assets, the benefits or the advantage of transferring assets is that if we needed to, if an operator changed on a particular route, we can take the assets and we can move them between operators. So they can stay on the same route, but they can move between operators. You are correct in saying that the route will be designed to take articulated vehicles, and it will be difficult to move them to another route where those design or infrastructure changes had not taken place. That said, in the future, those changes may take place on other routes.
Thank you. Personally,
that other point about paragraph 5.
Sorry. So the through you, Chair, the articulated buses were included in the Growth Bus business case, and the Growth Bus business case is approved and is part of the continuous programme. So that funding is approved and part of the continuous programme, which is why that.
I could answer this.
Yeah.
So that paragraph is somewhat superfluous in that we're essentially saying we've got the money, we're ready to go, and we don't need to change the annual plan in order to accommodate it. Is that?
It is important though, and it's part of the reason we've got the recommendations that have been circulated to you in advance, because in a sense, with the government funding decisions around the National Land Transport Plan and the National Land Transport Fund, as we've discussed before, essentially anything could be on the table, even if it's already approved under the long-term plan for cuts, right? Like you could do anything. And what we're saying today, and the purpose of the recommendations that we're going to propose, is to essentially protect this project, to prioritise it, and to say whatever else we might need to reduce or cut, we're not touching this one because it's so important to the future of our public transport network. So it is a useful exchange there that you're having, I think. But we'll deal with it a bit more when we get to the debate. So, Councillor Wolf, you wanted to come back for a second bite, so please go for it. Oh, Mike, Simon.
Sorry.
Just put the mic.
Sorry. Ease and speed, especially at peak, exit and entry, will it be both back and front with the integrated ticketing system?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, it will be.
Fantastic.
Yeah. So I think the RT bus we're looking at, I think a 3-door version. So yeah, the back doors will definitely both have ticketing systems on them. Yeah.
So just on that, the most electric articulated vehicles that are produced now do have those 3 sets of doors. So I think it's highly likely that will be the case. I'm not sure if we've completely decided that through the procurement, but I expect that will be the case. One thing to say is that all door boarding, we don't have that at the moment on the Metlink network for buses. It would significantly improve boarding and alighting times, even more so for articulated buses with 3 sets of doors. So that's something that we're going to have to look at and consider. And ideally, we would have a decision on that would coincide with the introduction of these buses. There are pros and cons to all door boarding, but yeah, we did. It's a good point to be raising, I think. Any other questions, Councillor Lee? Yep.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Just a layperson question. The turning circles, are they short? I mean, smaller than the a standard bus?
Through the chair, from memory, 4% longer. So the turning circles are actually not nearly as big as you would think from the size of the bus, and that's the purpose of the articulation.
Thank you very much. So if there are no more questions, we've got these recommendations that maybe we can pop them up on the screen that we circulated. Maybe I should probably move these, having put them forward. Darren, do you want to second them? So there we go. Thank you for volunteering. And just to sort of speak to these, the paper as we got it was an information paper. As it says, this project is underway. It's on the books. It's funded. So in a sense, maybe we don't need to do anything. But in the context of the funding decisions from government that have made life very challenging across the whole suite of both operational work and capital investments for improvements in public transport infrastructure, there is much more uncertainty for us, and our sense was that we wanted to protect this project as one of our core projects that we absolutely must deliver for the network. I mean, we're talking about possibly doubling the patronage on this route from 3 million trips a year to 6 million trips a year within the next 10 years. So we just can't afford not to progress with this project at pace, despite those funding challenges that we're now facing from government decisions. So that was where we were going with these. We've worked with the Metlink team and with Democratic Services. So hopefully that is a good explanation. So with that, I'll open up. Darren, do you want to speak? Councillor Ponta? No, happy. Anyone else? Councillor Saw?
I had a question.
Oh, just go for it. You can ask a question.
Yeah, I mean,
I'll
I've
answer
been using
it.
the standing orders. My question is around paragraph 24 around the design of the Golden Mile, and I guess that's contingent on Wellington City Council. So the design is already suitable for EAVs. Can we have any assurance, or do we have any sense whether, if we get a pewter mile instead, whether that EAV requirement will be locked in? And I guess it's the what if we don't know. Help.
Yeah, well, I think our sense is that whatever happens with the Golden Mile, we can make it work with articulated buses. So I think we're reasonably confident on that front. It's not the main issue. The main issue for the next tranche is going to be out towards the east, and that is there's considerably more uncertainty on that side, I would say.
I just think it's worth worrying about everything, because I don't think. Yeah.
Yes, we do worry. We do worry about everything, and but yeah. Councillor Kirkman.
Just a question. With these buses and that, will we have interchangeability with the charging systems on our present buses, and that will they work with the same charging systems and that?
Through the chair.
Yeah, go for it. I mean, we're
yeah, the charging systems are all completely compatible. Yep.
And the new depot, that there will be in Karawari will obviously be servicing these, and that will have to have some seriously grunty charging infrastructure for this fleet. Councillor Wolf, yeah. We are in debate. Yes. I know. Well, we're being open to people.
Okay, questions. Yeah. This is good. Yeah. Firstly, this is a game changer, and quite often in local government, we're accused of doing things at a pedestrian rate. This is not. This is really impressive, guys. That we only talked about this a short time ago, and we're looking to implement in 2026. So I think that's worth noting. Secondly, as part of a game changer, we do this successfully, and I think we've done this to date very carefully because of what happened in 2018, as Darren alluded to. I think that this will bring us a lot more versatility and a lot more reliability, and also the future proofing of what we may be able to do with our resources within the city. People have talked about trackless trams and light rail and all that sort of stuff. This is a step probably before that, and it looks as though that with successful procurement that we can do it within a really good budget as well. So thank you to you for what you've achieved to date, and also to our chair who's really pushed it. Yeah, the combination of Thomas and Sam. Yeah, because you guys, you've worked on this, and I think that this is a really good example of how local government can work to achieve an end result. And I hope I don't eat my words at the end of it, but I'm sure I won't. Yeah, we won't have another 2018. This is good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Wolf. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This is really good stuff. It is, EAV is a keeper, and I see it as mass rapid transit extra light. It's and I'm a real fan of running on rubber and not on rail. So yes, well done.
Thanks, everyone. If that's everything, we will put the motion. So all those in favour of these recommendations, please say aye. Those against? So those are carried. So thank you very much, and we will carry on. Thanks, team. It is, as others have said, it's really good work, progressing really nicely. So thank you. Okay, item 8 is the Regional Public Transport Plan. Emmett, we are in your hands. Thank you again.
Good morning, councillors, and just acknowledging with Scott Watson here, or Scott Walker here today. Mind is somewhere else, clearly.
I'm just not gonna.
You don't come back from that, do you?
No, I'm just not gonna say.
No. Start again. Through you, Chair.
Well, that's a rehabilitation.
So this is primarily a procedural paper to formally amend the RPTP timings as formally adopted previously. Take the paper as read, and just happy to take any questions or comments.
Yeah, any did you questions? Yeah, Councillor Saw, I thought you had a question. Yeah.
Thank you. My question is around paragraph 15, but first up, again, on the same theme as the Tawa On Demand team, just want to acknowledge that you've had to go, we were so close that we were drilling you about how we're going to socialise it amongst the community, and then hang on, record scratch, here we are back to the drawing board. So I just want to acknowledge that you've had to sort of recalculate and recalibrate everything. I guess my question is to yourselves and maybe our chair of our Regional Transport Committee, of whether has this happened before where our funding has been cut in this way that we've had to go back and review and revise our regional transport plan?
Through you, Chair. So in previous years, we have actually had pauses on reviews of the Regional Public Transport Plan, and they have been for a variety of reasons, including the 2018 circumstances that Councillor Ponter referred to earlier. So there was actually quite a gap. So the previous to the current Regional Public Transport Plan, there was a roughly 6-year gap, and that was caused by a variety of interventions, not just financial of this sort.
So this is not really outside the bounds of things we've done before. And I guess in part of having to rejig everything, do we have a sense of whether we'll be able to achieve our regional land transport goals in the medium to long term? Like, what kind of impact will it have on those goals? Have we clearly articulated those?
That's a very, through you, Chair, that's a very comprehensive question, and I don't know if I could give you a really pithy answer. One of the things I think to emphasise, it's not quite answering your question, but we still have to be mindful that the plan is largely an aspirational document. It's setting out what we want the public transport network to look like in the future, and we have to be very mindful to include every project, every initiative, because if it isn't in here, it won't get funded in the future. But of course, having it in here isn't a guarantee of that funding. So we have to really just do a balance between the aspirational versus what will actually happen. So I can't really answer your question. Apologies.
Yeah, no, you can't be expected to answer that. It is just, there is quite a lot of uncertainty. So, yeah, we've got Councillor Duthie next, and then Councillor Kirkland.
Thank you. Kia ora, Emmett. Can you give us a flavour of how the Public Transport Advisory Group has helped shape the Regional Public Transport Plan to date, and how can we draw on their lived experience and to advise us on these redrafting choices that we have?
Through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor. So I'll get David Boyd to answer that in a second. But we have engaged on a number of occasions with the PTAG group. We've taken various individual initiatives to them, and the general sort of flavour of the plan and the general direction. We will be coming back to them, I think, in a meeting prior to consultation. I think there's just the schedules are being firmed up on that, but we have had some good input from PTAG. But I think maybe David would give a fuller answer.
Yeah, through the chair. Yeah, they were the first group that we engaged with, so they sort of provided some direction on the overall RPTP. And as Emma's pointed out, there's a number of specific topics we've engaged them on, and we do plan to engage them early in the new year to get their feedback again on the overall plan, and maybe with some of the more contentious things highlighted for their input.
Thank you for that. Next question, Councillor Cooperland.
Thank you. And look, I may be making a fool of myself, and this wouldn't be the first time, but in note 2, where we talk about the 134 million shortfall, I thought actually that there was $134 million of project and that the shortfall in the funding was $68 million. Can you just correct me on that or tell me I'm wrong?
Through you, Chair, no, our total investment that we put forward for the significant investment category was more like 270 million, like 268. So there would be 134 million thereabouts of FAR funding, which is the percentage that wasn't granted. So yeah, we've got 134 and we don't have it rather than 268.
Okay, and Councillor Lee is next.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. Are you confident that the RPTP with the redraft will still retain a strong accessibility ethos?
Through you, Chair, absolutely. And one thing to note, the Transport Authority have been very encouraging and supportive of all accessibility type of narrative we have put in here, so absolutely.
And drawing direction from PTAG?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good questions, Councillor Lee. Councillor Duffy, second bite of the cherry.
Absolutely. Delicious cherry it is. So a completely separate question. What are the main aspects of the draft RPTP that need to be revised in light of the funding situation, and particularly in the context that it is an aspirational document and our aspirations haven't changed, but the context of funding and providing things has changed. So can you give us a sense of what are some of the key things that need to adjust in the RPTP because of the funding situation?
Thank you, Councillor. Through you, Chair. We have a considerable list, and this is feedback from across officers, but also the feedback we have received from NZTA. So items include, very topical, is on demand. So we have a significant 2-page section, for example, currently on demand. We will reflect the decisions and deliberations today in that revision. Projects, noting Councillor Saw's earlier comments, some of the slight language reframing and maybe making it a little bit clearer about our intentions regarding individual projects, noting that they may have to be rephased. So there's sort of a language piece throughout there. We also have been asked to make a stronger economic statement about the value of public transport in the earlier part of the document. That has come from a couple of sources, including NZTA themselves. So they actually want us to be very, very strong in our opening statements about the benefits of public transport. We are wanting to have a little bit of clarity internally about the positions we take on capacity versus coverage, which is very fundamental to how we provide and how we view the provision of public transport services. Regional challenges and regional opportunities, so that's very much at that sort of meta level. Again, starting to talk more and really emphasize long-term infrastructure needs. So we're going to have a much, much stronger narrative in there about essential infrastructure and how it all relates to each other. School services, we want to be a little bit more detailed and prescriptive on where we will do that, where we won't. And then some of the regional sections, we just need a little bit of tidy up. And I do understand, Councillor, you have some feedback for us on the sort of hot narrative that we have. So we have a comprehensive set of redrafts that we're currently working on, and obviously keeping an eye on policy announcements at the moment, and they are coming thick and fast. And maybe just to emphasize, just to finalize what I'm saying on that. So we saw the issuing of new RPTP guidelines by the agencies. Under law, we are required to address those and meet the requirements under those, and we did that. So it was a very, very quick turnaround. So just an acknowledgement to all our Metlink colleagues for feeding into that piece of work. Very quick turnaround, and the agency has seen our draft as very much a nice leading document for this sort of work.
Thanks, Emma. Yep. I mean, I guess the tone of the document will be slightly more circumspect, and will certainly reflect the funding conditions that are new. So, in addition to everything else you said.
And apologies, Chair, if I might just say there is an important final piece to add, that of course as the bus procurement work is going through, so acknowledging Kevin Forward and his colleagues who are working in that area, still looking at the unit design, finalising the drafting. We'll be plugging that in. We might have some interim wording on that, and that we will deal with at a later date through a variation. So lots of other little pieces like that that are very important.
Thank you. Good question. Good exchange there. Next is Councillor Kirkland.
Thank you. I'll just come back to that. Note 2, and what was doing my head in there is the 134 million shortfall is over 3 years. And that was a point that I was missing from there as far as I was concerned.
Yep, that's right. No, it's a 3-year plan. Yep. Okay, are we ready to, would somebody like to move these motions? Councillor Saw is willing to move them. Councillor Bassett is willing to second them. So would anyone like to speak in debate on this? Councillor Saw?
Thanks for the work. I think it's good to have a clear picture of the sort of circumspect nature of all of this. Thanks.
Thank you. Any other speakers in debate? I will put the motion then. All those in favour, please say aye. Those against, that's passed. So thank you very much for the team, and we will see you soon for the next update.
Wonderful, thank you.
Okay, penultimate item today is public transport performance update. So looking at September. So Matt Choate, thanks for coming up, Matt. And you may be aware that Matt has been acting as the senior manager for this area of work since Mel left, and this will be his last Transport Committee meeting doing that. So just say thanks very much for all of your work. It's been brilliant working with you, and it's been a brilliant 12 months in terms of improvement of operations. So congratulations to you. And Matt's, we're not losing Matt, so we'll see him again very soon. So with that, Matt, over to you.
Kia ora koutou. Hello, councillors. This report, once again, is a pretty darn good view on what we're delivering at the moment. a great performance really overall. When you think about, there's a little bit of a blip in rail land. They was mostly due to industrial action back in September. The bus services, in terms of a delivery, we delivered 98,774 services, which was on our busy day we do 3,950. And on average, the cancellations we had on that month is about 19, is exactly 19 per day. So we're doing pretty well in that regard. The Wairarapa hunting issue, which is post-September, the interoperability between the wheels and the rail has had the TSR, the speed restriction, lifted, and every early indication has seen some quite marked improvements on the service in terms of journey times, so the local commuters should be happy in that regard. We're ticking the 5 pillars of public transport currently. We're safe, reliable, punctual, frequent, and we are cost effective. We will have a granular look at farebox and patronage a little bit later in the workshop. And apart from that, I think I'm happy to take almost any question.
That's a good invitation to these councillors. Thank you, Matt. Really good report as usual, and thanks to everyone. So we've got Councillor Staples and then Councillor Laban.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. This is probably one of those almost any questions. Great report, thank you. And I, as a Wairarapa councillor, obviously very happy to see improvement on our line, even small improvement. But my question is actually around one of the glitches that we had in that a couple of weeks ago, the Wairarapa line had, I think it was a brake problem, and was bus replaced. And the email I got said, you know, train had a brake problem, bus replaced, and you think, oh yes, okay. But what was in the paper was a shambles of buses not being in the right, or whatever, it was a shambles, and the person that was interviewed was pretty upset, blah. Now, even allowing for the fact that the press will take an angle that is possibly not conducive to our side of the story, it didn't read anything like the email that I got. So what I'm asking, is it possible, please, when we have those sorts of things, that the councillor is actually made aware of the whole problem, and so that when you read it in the paper, you're knowing what to expect, and when you get somebody on the street saying, stuffed up again, Adrian, haven't you? You know why. I'm not sure if you can answer that or not, but
I think that's a good question, and I think yeah, Sam. I mean, we can take that on board, and I think it is a constant area of improvement that we need. I think communications about incidents before, during, and after, and we know that's a big work on. I think bus replacement in general is a major issue that we need to work on. We know about that. We have a stream of work on it, and we'll talk more about that at some point. But we can talk more about it now as well if people would like to. But Councillor Laban next, and then Councillor Duffy.
Matt, great job, mate. Items 15 and 23 kind of take questions sort of in relation to both 100% of pre-COVID for bus patronage and 73.2, I think, or 72.3 of train pre-COVID. I'm just wondering at the relevance of the pre-COVID numbers to today. Is that a question? Yes. Is that number still relevant? Are there more or less or the same in terms of potential patronage, I guess?
Through you, Chair. Happy to not reference pre-COVID if that's what's wanted. It has been around for a while and it was a benchmark, but certainly be more than happy to kind of remove that vernacular from our discussions. Really,
I think it's a good question, because for me, I've thought it was a useful benchmark 2019, because basically it was the last full calendar year where we didn't really have any disruptions. The network was working well. It was growing. And then since then, we haven't. Yeah, we didn't have. Well, we did have some work from home, but nowhere near the amount that we do now. And so it was kind of like a benchmark year. And so we haven't had a clean calendar year since then, where we haven't had some form of driver shortage, pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. And so I feel like possibly at the end of this calendar year, we may decide, well, our benchmark now is calendar year 2024, and so we won't need to compare with pre-COVID. But yeah, it's an interesting point actually. But,
yeah. Through you, Chair, I'd just say that yes, it may well be time that we've recalibrated, and now the transport patterns are different, and so we need to reset our baseline. And it will be a useful conversation actually in the workshop this afternoon, and we talk about assumptions behind our patronage forecasting.
Yeah. Obviously, the positive thing about resetting will be that we're much more likely to have growth, and we won't be like in a massive negative zone for rail, which is psychologically an improvement, but possibly scientifically and financially important too. So, okay, next is Councillor Duffy.
Thank you. Leading from that, actually, just wanting to draw attention to the divergence of the two patronage trends, bus and rail. And so on page 11 of the attachment with rail passenger boarding section, there's a clear decline over the first 3 months, July, August, September. And then a few pages later, looking at the rolling average, there's a definite trend of arcing down, which is worrying. And I know that is sort of one of the aspects of the workshop this afternoon, but I just wanted to highlight that because I think we probably need to move into quite a focused strategic conversation about how do we arrest the decline of rail, knowing the factors that are leading to that, doing our best to analyse that and see what we can do to incentivise or promote or make the best of the rail situation that we have. So is there a question in there?
Yes, there is, and I think it's we definitely want to have a focused look at rail and what we can do. I mean, I think there's a number of issues around rail that are causing issues. I mean, I think performance, reliability, punctuality, speed restrictions is having a big impact, as well as the more kind of work from home elements as well. So we need to address all of it, and I think we can talk about that more. And it's a tricky one because bus is far more in our control, reliability, punctuality, patronage, etc. Whereas rail, it's much less in our control because of the asset owners, the operators, etc. of the track.
And some of those drivers are not within our control, like the contraction of the public service at the moment is no doubt having an effect, and we can't change that. But we can, I guess, do what we can to respond to that situation. So thank you, Thomas.
Yeah, thank you very much. Next is Councillor Wolf.
Yeah, thanks, Mac. I'm just referring to 53, the Warranted Transport Officer activity for September. And it looks great for a start. There is no infringement notices that have been issued. And I'm wondering if the graph below sort of translates to warnings. Is that generally the situation that occurs?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, if you may recall, the Warranted Transport Officers have the 4 E's, the very last of which is that enforcement piece, right? So it's mostly about that engagement and assistance and encourage people and inform them of where we're going and what we need to make sure that we get fares paid on a regular basis in the future, should someone have that. And it would be the very last resort that you would have I don't know, is it the right word, a recidivist offender that would then be have an enforcement notice, which at this point in time we're not seeing in great numbers.
And generally this is a new initiative, so how's it gone down? With the public and the users.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Look, they have some really good conversations with the public. It's maybe telling our story has they're our mouthpiece out there. You know, we don't quite shout often enough, in my humble opinion, how well we're doing, how well our operators are doing, not just because we've got one in the room at the moment, but they are performing to a high level currently. We could be telling people more and more of that. In fact, earlier on, some of the public were saying, you know, give us information about what's actually happening and how regular things are actually moving. The anecdotal hangover of my bus never comes, right, is a real thing for people. So we have to tell them, actually, the bus is coming almost all the time. You know, perfection is really hard to achieve 365 days a year. And in fact, today we've had 2 cancellations, so we're not perfect, but it's pretty darn close, and we should be telling people that.
Yeah,
don't know if I answered your question.
Yeah, it does. And just one comment, I had some feedback from a rail passenger who said that they felt safer. So, you know, that's a good thing. Thanks, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor Connolly, and then we'll come back to you, Councillor Duffy.
I blame quite a bit of the decline in rail on the bus replacements. One, that they have to happen at all, but obviously, you know, as an advocate for responsible infrastructure, clearly we've got backlog of tracks that we need to maintain, and this is the only way to do it. So I accept that, but I don't think we've got it right in terms of what we're doing in the bus replacement space. And just anecdotally, I'm still hearing of Scody buses picking people up that aren't compliant with our rules. And also, I thought we were only using the NCS buses as kind of a fallback, because once we'd got the driver shortage sorted, we were going to have transurban buses that we could use as a first cab off the rank. I don't think they're not the norm. The NCS buses that are compliant are probably the norm, but then we're also seeing non-compliant NCS buses still providing bus replacement services. Why have we not sorted this? It seems to be a recurrent problem.
Through you, Chair, bus replacements or rail replacements are a problem. They are a fact of operating PT. The network provider needs access. We're doing some work in the customer space on constantly trying to improve, because we know that is an inferior service, and it's not perfect. Well, it's actually imperfect. So we are working on that. The level of PTOM, if I use PTOM to non-PTOM rather than single out anyone, has swung around quite significantly. Most of the tenders seem to be getting several responses. There's a panel for these plan ones, which is the 4 PTOM operators and plus 1. And the bulk of the work is going to the 4 PTOM operators. They also have to manage this business on top of their regular services in line with driver hours and things like that. So sometimes they may opt out because they've got people on planned holidays and things like that, and they may opt out of certain runs or opportunities for them. But in general, we're better off than what we were, and still working to that perfection, towards that perfection sort of space, or as near as we can get to it. I don't know if that. So
I'm hearing that we are turning the dial towards those PTOM buses. Actually, if I could have some stats on that, that would be really useful. What about the non-compliant, non-PTOM buses?
I don't think I can answer that today. And in fact, I was kind of searching for stats as you were asking before, sorry, through you, Chair. So we'll come back with both those views on what those percentages have moved to, and a view on the level of non-compliance. That largely should be quite low. So every transport operator, PTOM and other tiers, still have to comply with all the legislative requirements of being a transport operator, passengers.
We had some extra requirements around bus racks, around snapper enablement, around some of these other things, which I'm not for a moment suggesting the buses aren't safe. I assume they are, and I hope to God they are. But some of those other features that we've been promising our clientele, we're still getting reports of that not occurring 100%.
Just one thing. So it was 83% of planned replacement services went to Metlink buses, but yeah, we don't have stats for how many of the unplanned were operated by Metlink. And or do we have stats? We probably do. Well, we will have stats, but we don't have them to hand right now. But one thing I think we probably should get, maybe just as we could request this, is like a table that shows all of the problems reported by people using bus replacements, then like the reason why those problems are occurring, and like solutions that we could put forward, and because I think showing our community that we understand all of the problems, and there's quite a long list. Obviously, Councillor Connolly just suggested some, and there are quite a few, and understanding, showing our community that we know why they're happening, and we have some proposed solutions. That would be good. Maybe we're already doing that.
Yes, through the chair, we just completed the first phase of a piece of work on BRT, which is talking to customers, looking at our complaints. So we have that already, and Margaret's just advised that actually there'll be a slot in November where we can share that in a workshop. And just to point out the plan now is through this summer, apart from some, I guess, easy wins we're proposing. For instance, we improve the experience of Platform 10. We spend this period getting much better data on vehicle compliance, levels of satisfaction, and levels of payment.
Thank you. Yep, I think Platform 10 at the station will be, there's lots of room for improvement there, which hopefully could be done without too much cost as well. I mean, some cost obviously, but
through your chair, it will be done, if you like, superficially as a trial, with banners, temporary signage.
Very good. Okay, we have Councillor Duffy again. Yep.
Thank you. I've been asked to raise a question on behalf of a constituent who wanted to do public participation today, but couldn't. There is a particular bus stop at the corner of Petherick Street and High Street in Lower Hutt, suburb of Taita in Lower Hutt, that has meant to have had a shelter installed for a while now. And the constituent wishes to convey that there are multiple disabled people that use that stop daily, including the constituent concerned, and they have been waiting a long time for a bus shelter at that site. One of the reasons for the delay was an adjacent neighbour having issues with it, and we understand that that has now been resolved. So their question is to Metlink, could that bus shelter please be prioritised as soon as possible, given the long wait so far and the number of disabled people that are, they don't even have a seat to wait in all weather conditions at that site. So I've been asked to convey that on behalf of that constituent. And also there's another bus shelter with a similar story to it in Wood Street in Wainuiomata that locals are keenly waiting for and would like to see prioritised. Can that be taken on board by Metlink?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. We've noted down both those stops, and I have a memory of this being talked about at a recent workshop as well. So I think it is so it's an issue that's well known to the team, and we will report back to you. We'll report back with an email updating everybody on when those shelters will be put in place.
Thank you.
Is that everything? That's everything. Hey, thanks, Matt, for a really good report, and for a very good term in office. And we will see you soon. Next item and final item is item 10. Craig, you want to come up? It's great to have you here, and thanks for coming to see the full suite of our discussions and deliberations today. Obviously, of relevance to you. So. give us an update on Mana and how it's all going.
Thanks, Thomas, and thanks for the invite to come and present today, Council. I'd just say I'm very disappointed that Councillor Ropata has turned off her camera because I was enjoying the view of the Basin Reserve.
I know. I was thinking, like, actually, we should make sure that's on when there's actually a game on.
Yeah, as a former cricketer, obviously.
We'll just go visit her. You could just maybe schedule a visit to that office at the right time.
I think that might be a good thing to do. Yeah. Cool. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Craig Chin. I'm the Managing Director at Mana Coach Services, so thank you for the opportunity to present today. So just a little bit about Mana. Look, we're a previously family-owned and operated company. Its origins lie in Meehan Motors, which was incorporated way back in 1949. Mana was owned by the Waddell family and in Newlands, the Narain family, and they were amalgamated in 1998. In 2009, Mana Newlands was sold to Suda Investments, and then we were finally sold to Transdev in 2019. And although we've been owned by corporates, I think the great thing about Mana is that we've always kept the family-owned and operated feel, which has helped us in a number of ways. Transdev, a little bit about them. So obviously, they're a global company, but they say we're global, but run by local experts. So hopefully that's me. And who understand Wellington and have provided services in the local region, which adds to the global expertise. We're also lucky enough to be working in conjunction with Transdev Wellington, who obviously run the rail, and they provide a little bit of support to Mana as well. So this is my team. We have about 120 staff. As of last month, it was 127. We run a really flat structure. So, you know, the senior leadership team really have really good engagement with the frontline staff, which is extremely important from our perspective. They're very experienced, my team. There's over 70 years of experience in my senior leadership team. I'm the least experienced out of all of them, and now I've been in public transport for 7 years, so it speaks a lot about my team, and obviously the team is extremely important to me, so I'm nothing without that team behind me. We'll get into it, and I know you wanted to talk about staff turnover and how we've managed to stay out of those issues. So part of that is that flat structure and the ability for us to engage with our frontline staff to ensure the important things in humans that we want to know, right? When there's an issue, then we're responding to that as quickly as we can. Cool. So Mana has really managed to stay out of the establishment number issues for the majority of our contract term since 2018. We don't have as large a workforce as some of our competitors, which does mean, what I've talked about, is we've been able to communicate with them clearly, and I feel like we're able to look after them and understand what their issues are. And by responding to them and responding to those issues quickly, then it means that we've had a lot of long-serving staff. So our longest-serving staff member is 80, and he served the company for 40 years, which is amazing. Our next closest is 37 years, and he works out of our Poirua depot. So yeah, just making sure we touch base, having regular meetings with those drivers, allowing them the ability to come forward and speak to us. Our office is extremely small as well, so none of us have offices. We're all open plan, so people can come and speak to us when they need to about those issues. Our actual issues in terms of staff have actually been outside of the driver area, and that's mainly been in the mechanical area, and it was kind of similar issues to the issues our other operators were facing in terms of, you know, it was a struggle to employ mechanics. So we have managed to be fully staffed and resourced from July this year, which we're extremely happy about, and that's showing an increase in our performance as well, which is fantastic. I guess another issue in terms of attracting people into the industry is just the nature of buses. And obviously it's, you know, getting people to work in the morning and then getting them home in the evening, which means that drivers may have to work long hours over that split, and then they might have a 3 or 4 hour gap in the middle of the day. I guess Mana does try and cover that work by doing charters in the middle of the day, so running the kids down to the schools, out to their school camps and things like that. But just the nature of it makes it difficult to attract people. And I guess also with that comes the changing expectations of the younger generation as well, and their expectations around, flexible working arrangements and, providing, more flexibility in the workplace, which is difficult, under a fixed route service. Cool. So our fleet, it's made up of a few different types of vehicles. So the AX service, thank you, Councillor Lee, for expressing its success. I do enjoy hearing that. Made up of the Yutong E13s. There's 10 of them. They've been running really well. We are scheduled to purchase a couple of new Yutong E13s into Unit 8 and 18 as well. The ADL E500s are the double deckers, so they were bought in the start of 2018. And then we also have 7 E200s, 2 are medium sized and 5 are large, which are running out of Newlands. And then we have an older fleet of Scania and Volvos, which came over as refurbished fleet. Those vehicles are between 2009 and 2011 years old. Most of them have been built at Kiwi Bus Builders. This has been very topical today, so I'll keep it short. Obviously, I thought the submissions today were extremely well thought out, and the paper was well considered, so I won't touch on that, but there have been some really good learnings out of the on-demand trial, and I think it is tribute to the people that have worked within Metlink, within ourselves and also VIA, because it actually does really take a tripartite to make sure that that service has been a huge success. I would say to the council that the drivers really have appreciated the opportunity to run that service, and that it has provided them with a completely different set of work compared to their fixed route services, and a lot of them have really enjoyed that change. In saying that, it has come with its own challenges in terms of training and the customer service levels that are required from our drivers to ensure that they are providing that good level of customer service. And it was great to hear from the community today that they really appreciated that. Cool. So Mana's focus moving forward is probably just to continue the operational excellence, and we call that just punctual and reliability and running of services. Obviously being able to stay out of shortages, and with the workshop being fully staffed, then we're seeing an uptick in our performance as well, which we're extremely happy about, so we want to continue that. Just continuing to focus on the partnership with GWRC and Metlink. Obviously there's a lot of projects going on at the moment that are of interest to us as well. Another really important thing that we've brought in this year is just to focus on the health and well-being of our staff, and we're doing that through a number of avenues. By providing health plans, ensuring that our chaplain is keeping in touch with individuals. Is obviously there's been some challenges lately in terms of increased mortgage rates and finances and things like that. So important that the staff are focused on. We do have some constraints around our Newlands yard. So basically the 2 EVs that are being brought in will mean that we're at capacity at that depot. So any further growth needs to be considered and things that we can look at to do that. And then Mana also has a number of systems which are being brought in from Transdev. It includes a new fleet management system and a new payroll system as well, as looking at some of our rostering systems and back-end systems for rostering as well. Cool. One of the really good things about being part of Transdev is using their global knowledge. So there's a task force at the moment running called the Collision Reduction Task Force. So that involves all of the 5 bus operators across Australia and New Zealand. And obviously we all operate in different operating environments and have different problems, but there are a set of shared problems across the businesses in terms of depot collisions, in terms of hotspots out on their networks and how we deal with them. So at the start of last year, we created a task force. We are joint as a New Zealand team with our Howick and Eastern team up in Auckland, and just exploring ways that we can reduce the collisions out on the networks and in our depots. So part of that has been having spotters at our depots, for example. So anytime there's a reversing movement, then we have dedicated individuals who help reverse those vehicles to reduce the damages, but then also using things like technology and training to improve those systems and procedures to make sure those drivers are aware of those hotspots out in the network. Obviously, there's been a rapid expansion in EVs across Australia and New Zealand, so it's obviously just sharing those best practices and making sure that we're sharing information across the businesses to, make the most of our learnings in that area. And then also just continuing to review the innovative technologies. So I know in Brisbane, for example, we even looked at having a hydrogen plant on site, but obviously comes with a significant set of health and safety risks having hydrogen on site. But also we have the AT trial of the hydrogen bus up in Auckland, and that's a picture of the Heidi unit which we've got running around. I spoke last time we were here about that in terms of a hydrogen injection into the fuel line to help on fuel savings, and then also on our emission profile as well. Cool. I've been through most of these anyway, so obviously, the depot space and limitations around there are really significant for us, and working with Metlink on that moving forward. Just industry problems in terms of the ageing workforce and the gender diversity within the bus space. We're obviously working really hard on that. TransEv have set some targets for us on that as well. And then just continuing to work with Metlink on some of those infrastructure challenges, and then obviously some of the build processes moving forward, which we have a vested interest in as well. Obviously, there's just a number of roadworks and things that are going on across the network as well. So it's just continuing to work, ensuring, whilst there is this disruption, that we're continuing to deliver the service that our customers come to expect. And the driver conditions piece I've already spoken to as well. So look, that's all from me. Happy to take any questions, and once again, thank you, Thomas, for the opportunity to present to the committee.
Thanks, Craig. Really great performance. So good. Love taking the Airport Express and all the services. So we've got a question from Councillor Staples.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair, and great report. And it's always good in this committee to have something positive, because quite often we're dealing with things that aren't. But my question is around, you made a comment that you're focusing on health and safety with your drivers or your staff as a whole. And there's also your challenges, there's the age of drivers. So looking at health and age, which I know often go together, and the fact that New Zealand's health system isn't the greatest at the moment, is there likely, given that you've got an ageing drivers that are getting older, is there likely to be an issue around them not being able to access the health services they need to keep driving? Because just because you're getting old doesn't mean to say you can't drive a bus. But if you can't get your cataracts done or something like that. So is this a real problem, or am I just making it up in my head?
Nah, look, obviously it's a certain, it is a challenge. I guess what we've done from Mana's perspective is we've brought in what's called health plans for those individuals, and Mana is contributing to some of those health costs. The main thing for us is to ensure that the drivers are healthy and safe on road, no matter what their age is. As they do get older, then our training ramps up for them as well. So maybe instead of annualised training reviews, then they're getting 6 or 3 month reviews to ensure the safety over the network, which is paramount. So yes, it is a challenge, but one that we want to ensure that it's a balance, right? Because at one point or another, then it may be time that that individual may decide that it is time to retire. So it's also having the conversation with the chaplain, with ourselves, to say it's okay to retire. It's not that scary, and you can still be involved in the company one way or another when you feel that that's time. So I guess it's taking away that fear factor as well, but also ensuring, from my perspective, that the company really does put its money where its mouth is and make sure that we're keeping our drivers safe, and there is a focus on that.
So if I may, Mr. Chair, just following on from that, what is Mana doing specifically, without giving away your trade secrets, to make sure you've got younger drivers coming through to replace the oldies that drop off the other end?
I wish there was an easy answer. Fortunately for us, we did go through a short driver shortage for a month there in June, and we have managed to recruit some younger individuals. When I say younger, they're younger than me, which is fantastic. So they've come across to the industry, which has been good. It is a challenge. I don't know what it is, but we have been able to fill those part-time positions, which have always been difficult to fill. And whether that's due to the economic environment in Wellington or what that is, I can't put my finger quite on it. But obviously, the attraction of younger individuals to the industry is something that the bus industry has to face as a whole. And I've always said, as soon as I joined this industry, it's like we can't target the school leavers because they're too young to drive heavy vehicles. So, they might finish school at 17, but, we can't actually speak to them till 3 years after that because they have to have their full license for 2 years. So we're missing a huge portion of that younger generation who might want to come not into just bus driving, but the public transport industry as a whole, similar to locomotive engineers and ferry operators as well.
Thank you very much. Councillor Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Craig, for coming in and for your update. My question is similar. It's about driver safety and more about their interaction with passengers. Are there any concerns, and is there any trend?
I guess I might have to get Metlink to comment over the network. I guess there was an uptick in aggressive behaviour that we identified at the end of last year. That seems to have dissipated slightly. I guess I can comment on what Mana does in terms of de-escalation training. So we've run 2 workshops as trials with the drivers around using real life examples of things that have happened across New Zealand and Australia. And help those drivers understand the de-escalation process and what should be involved in those situations. But yeah, obviously, Councillor Nash spoke about the incident, and obviously aggression is on the rise in Auckland, so it's something that the industry has to face in terms of that aggressive behaviour and how we deal with it.
Is that, are you observing any of that here in Wellington? Or do we hope it's just isolated further north?
So we haven't seen across the board an increase in violence. In general, society has become a bit more antisocial or aggressive, I suppose. But we've got some statistics that track that from all our operators each month from the various health and safety reports that we get and monitor that, and we continue to track it.
Thank you.
Councillor Saw.
Thanks, Craig. Always nice to get an update from you and your team. Mine's not really a question, but more a bit of a suggestion of the AX, as we're all like massive fans of it. I do notice that there was it's quite popular amongst sort of out of town visitors, and often the drivers are having to help people with where their accommodation is and where the stops are. I wonder if that's as a sort of basic practical solution, is there information that the drivers can have to help that? It seems, or other passengers will ask other passengers, so I'll end up being a tourist guide. Not that I don't mind doing that, but is there any way that we can support drivers, or that there's some information for them, because they often get asked?
Yeah, we do actually in the training program have mapped out, I think there's like maybe 14 or 15 of the key hotels, and when the drivers are inducted, they're shown that map. But look, I'm sure we'd be open to opinions and anything that could help improve the customer experience.
I mean, even I can't keep up with the constant name changes of the hotels. I think that might be one of a very small issue in that too, where someone will be like, is this this? I'm like, I don't know, it's changed its name. So that might be one of the issues.
Thank you. Any other questions? That looks like it. Hey, thanks for coming in, Craig. Brilliant presentation as always. Great results. We love working with you. We're very happy to have you as a partner for Metlink. And yeah, looking forward to continuing that partnership. So thanks very much for coming in.
Thanks, Thomas. Thanks.
Cheers. Okay, that's us for the meeting today. Yeah, really good work, everyone. I think good participation from everyone, and great reports and good contributions. It's very windy. Apparently, it's going to be very windy this afternoon and this evening as well. Okay, well, we'll yeah. So we'll close off with a karakia. Me karakia tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki te urutapu nui, kia wātea, kia māma, te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua e te ara takatā, koiara e rongo, whakairia ake ki runga, kia tina, uie, taike. Thanks everyone. And